Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Thursday, May the 15th, 2025, the 135th day of the year, 5/15/25, digitally or in your journal, and National Chocolate Chip Day. Chocolate chip cookies, chocolate chip muffins, chocolate chip ice cream, chocolate chips on your ice cream, or your frozen yogurt. Sure, it's good for you. It's yogurt. And in many other countries around the world, including most of Europe, today is International Day of Family. In the Middle East,
no visit in the Gulf would be complete without stopping to salute the people who keep America safe, strong, and free, and the patriots of the United States Army, Navy.
President Trump celebrating the United States military with troops at the Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest military base in that region.
It's an amazing part of the world, and our relationship has never been stronger.
President Trump is now in Abu Dhabi in the Emirates after signing a $1.2 trillion economic deal with Qatar's Emir yesterday. Part of that deal includes a record-breaking order from Qatar Airways for Boeing jets. So they're offering to give the United States a $400 million luxury jet to replace our old Air Force One, right? Because Boeing hasn't been able to build a new Air Force One. But then they order more than 150 new jets from Boeing. Wow. President Trump is an amazing salesman. Am I the only one that thinks that's funny? The deal also includes potentially billions of dollars in upgrades to the Al Udeid Air Base there in Qatar. And you can read all about the $1 trillion agreement at Newsmax.com. And this was President Trump's final comment on Iran before leaving for the UAE.
It's very simple. It's not like I have to give you 30 pages worth of details. There's only one sentence: they can't have a nuclear weapon. And I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step.
The president again issuing a warning to Iran. Newsmax senior Washington correspondent James Rosen with more.
As President Trump embarked on his trip to the Persian Gulf Monday, U.S. and Iranian negotiators were preparing for a fifth round of nuclear talks.
I think they understand that I mean business, and I think they're being very reasonable thus far.
The effort to prevent Tehran from taking the final steps it needs to develop nuclear weapons appears to be entering a new and tougher phase.
We have, to a large extent, moved away from general discussion and gotten into more detailed matters. Naturally, this makes the negotiation even more difficult.
Overseeing the Iran talks and much else is presidential envoy Steve Witkoff. While a newcomer to international diplomacy, Witkoff has the president's ear.
Steve knew very little about the subject matter. Who does? But he learned it in about 2 hours.
And the envoy receives no shortage of advice from outside sources.
3 decades of experience.
At a Capitol Hill news conference where the group united against a nuclear Iran showed off one of the regime's Shahed 136 drones, recovered from Ukraine and smuggled to the U.S. via Poland. Lawmakers and experts weighed in on what should and should not be in any final nuclear deal.
Republicans will keep maximum pressure on Iran, by the way, until we see full and permanent nuclear disarmament. Nothing less will do.
Personally, I don't think the Ayatollah needs uranium for any kind of energy production.
And any sanctions relief that would go to the government of Iran would fund that machinery to further oppress the people of Iran.
Contrary to Senator Cruz's demand that any final deal must strip Iran of its uranium enrichment capabilities, Tehran's top negotiator drew a red line around that condition after the end of the last round of talks in Oman on Sunday, saying the principle of enrichment itself is not even negotiable. In Washington, James Rosen, Newsmax.
All right. Thank you, James. You heard House Speaker Mike Johnson talk about Iran in that clip. The House Speaker and other Republicans on Wednesday finally addressed the Democrats that are causing problems and mixing it up with ICE agents outside that Newark, New Jersey immigration detention center.
3 Democrat members of Congress got into a physical altercation with our ICE agents. I mean, outside the Delaney Hall Detention Center in New Jersey. What a spectacle that was. What a horrible What a horrible display for our children to see, right? Amid a long list of shameful and embarrassing episodes this year, that altercation, I think it takes the cake. I think it's a new low for congressional Democrats. Republicans want to detain and deport criminal illegal aliens. Democrats want to empty the jails.
Congressional correspondent Kilmeny Dukart has some exclusive reporting on the altercation at the detention center. Kilmeny, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Katrina, good to be with you. Secretary Noem was testifying here on Capitol Hill. It was supposed to be about the DHS fiscal budget, but this incident with these 3 Democratic lawmakers was dominating much of the agenda today. In that hearing, she's criticized Democrats, including Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is again defending her colleagues, but also suggested that she and Border Czar Tom Homan, that there would be a problem if they laid a finger on these 3 Democratic lawmakers. I asked Noem following that hearing for her response.
She's wrong. We're the ones standing up and enforcing the law as it's been laid out by Congress over the years. What I would say is that it's the Department of Justice that will decide what actions might be taken or prosecution that may happen. But for us, we're going to continue to do our work. The American people want safe communities, and they want their kids to be safe, have an opportunity at the American dream.
Have you spoken to Speaker Johnson at all about maybe the need to censure these 3 Democratic lawmakers?
To him specifically, I do know that many members of Congress have reached out to me over it, though.
I also spoke with Border Czar Tom Homan today, who was giving an address to the Republican Study Committee here on Capitol Hill. He's been engaged in a war of words over the last few weeks with Ocasio-Cortez, previously suggesting that she should be under investigation. Here's what he told me.
When she says, if you lay a finger on them, there's going to be a problem. What do you make of that?
That's a ridiculous statement. I'm going to enforce the law. I don't care if the member of Congress or not. I've been clear from day one. You cross that line of impediment, interference, knowingly harbor, concealing illegal alien, it's a violation of the law. Now, she was the one screaming the last 4 years, no one's above the law. Well, she's right. No one's above the law, including members of Congress. We're going to continue doing what we're doing, and I make no apologies that we're doing it.
Now, this is video posted by Democratic Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman of her and her colleagues, including Congressman Robert Menendez and Monica McIver at the Delaney Hall Detention Center on Friday, which resulted in the arrest of Newark's mayor. The House Homeland Security Committee Republican Chair Mark Green showing the committee that video, which was framed in a very different light by the ranking Democrat, Benny Thompson.
Instead of following the law, masked ICE personnel stopped and assaulted the members. Then, to make matters worse, instead of launching an investigation into the incident, your department lied to the press about the situation and threatened to arrest members of Congress for doing their job. Absolutely outrageous.
Now, Noem tells me that any investigation happening with these 3 lawmakers will occur with the Justice Department. And Border Czar Tom Homan declined to answer my question when asked if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was currently under investigation.
That is Newsmax congressional correspondent Kilmeny Dukart on Capitol Hill. Prior to that, Tom Homan, the Border Czar, spoke with Greta Van Susteren about AOC's comments.
Border Czar Tom Homan joins me. Good evening, sir. And since you were named in that, your thoughts on what Congressman AOC says about you and whether or not if you lay a finger on, or maybe you can tell me whether arrests are likely. What can you give me an update?
Well, first of all, I am extremely intimidated. Wow. Look, she's foolish. Bottom line is, she's been yelling and screaming for the last 4 years, no one's above the law, including members of Congress. I've said from day one, you cannot support ICE. Shame on you, but you can do that. You can protest against ICE. Okay, I disagree with you, but you can do that. But you can't cross the line. You can't cross the line of impediment. You can't cross the line of knowing and harboring or concealing an illegal alien. And you certainly can't trespass on the ICE detention facilities. And you can't violate the law. So when you cross that line, we'll ask the Attorney General to prosecute, and that's what we're doing.
And has there been a response from Attorney General Pam Bondi? Is she looking into it? Is it likely? Can you give me the latest on that?
I can tell you that I can tell you there's lots of video being reviewed. There are statements being taken from witnesses. So we'll see where the investigation leads. Wherever the investigation leads, that's what we decide what to do. But Alina Habba will make the ultimate decision if anybody more is going to be prosecuted. I've seen the videos, and I think the Congress people that were there were extremely unprofessional. This is a facility. They've been screaming and yelling. We demand due process. We demand due process for illegal alien gang members, terrorists. And here's a facility that gives them that due process, and they want to shut it down. They want to prevent ICE from operating that facility. And when you force your way in a facility, when you cause chaos like this, it puts the officers at risk, the unarmed employees at risk. We got some bad people in that facility, and we got to maintain maximum security of that facility. So what happened there is extremely unprofessional by the part of the protesters and the members of Congress. And we'll see when the investigation comes out. If there's going to be additional criminal charges, not my decision. That will be all up to Alina Habba.
Tom Homan on Newsmax with Greta Van Susteren. Alina Habba, as you likely know, is President Trump's former attorney turned special counsel to the president and now the interim U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey. If you have seen the video of ICE agents and the Democrats outside the facility that have been playing the last 4 or 5 days, I feel the odds of Alina Habba, who already locked up the mayor, first off, are pretty good of her filing some charges, right? Not only are ICE agents working hard to get illegal aliens out of the country, they are also working hard alongside the U.S. military to keep more illegals from coming into the country. This is Oklahoma Senator James Lankford on Newsmax with Emma Rechenberg and Sean Kreisman.
Senator Lankford, thank you so much for taking the time. Under the Trump administration 2.0, we've kind of adjusted to the fewer border crossings, right, that had been wide open during the previous administration. But what were your takeaways from what's actually happening when you were able to visit the southern border?
A dramatic change that's actually occurred. I go to the border pretty regularly, and I have for the past 10 years to be able to check in different aspects, different places along the border to be able to find out what's actually happening. It's remarkable to be able to see now versus a year ago and what's really happening at the border. Number one, the morale of our federal law enforcement is up again. They're finally getting a chance to enforce the law. They're turning people around. They're not hotel check-in folks that the Biden administration had them, where they were basically checking them in as they're crossing the border and releasing them in the country. Now they're arresting them, processing them, and turning them around immediately. And it doesn't matter what country they're coming from. They're getting turned around, put on planes, and flown back to their original country. So the message is getting clear. And they've also started prosecuting people if they have multiple crossings. That's a felony to be able to cross multiple times. So the individuals that are being picked up that have been caught before, they're now prosecuting them, giving them a felony, and then returning them back to their home country, which means they can never be allowed to be able to come back in the country again. Visa or not, they're blocked permanently.
You do hear that time and time again from people within the border, Border Patrol agency, that the morale is the big thing that's really changed, as well as, securing the border. But last year, you led some negotiations here on bipartisan border security bill that faced some serious opposition as well from within your own party. How does what you saw during your recent border visit compare to maybe some solutions that have been proposed in that legislation?
Yeah, so go back to be clear, a year and a half ago when we were working on that bill, we were trying to get Biden to actually enforce the law. So half of that bill was cutting off funding to the Biden administration until they actually enforced the law that they had. The second half was closing loopholes and trying to be able to solve some of the issues. Right now, a lot of conservatives are complaining that the courts are holding up some of the things that the Trump administration wants to do, and some of them are being argued in the courts. That bill last year was to try to make it very clear when days like this came that the president does have the authority to be able to enforce the law. So I would expect many of the things the president's doing right now, they're going to be just fine. The courts are going to say it's consistent with the law. A couple of the areas the president's doing right now are in the courts. I don't know how they're going to rule. I do know how they would have ruled if we'd have passed that bill last year, because it would have made very clear that the president has the authority to be able to enforce the law. So I understand the politics of last year and all the things that are in it. Right. It didn't go as far as I wanted to be able to go by far on that, because I'm negotiating with a Democrat president. But my goal was to make sure that we're securing the border, that the president always has the authority they need to be able to make it very clear America's open to legal immigration. Sure. We're the illegal immigration.
Y'all are also wondering, where were these judges during the past 4 years when you've got criminals who are entering this country illegally? Speaking of some legal questions here, I got to ask you about this supposed gift to the United States, and as the president describes it, a gift to the DOD in regards to an estimated $400 million jet. It's going to be used as Air Force One and then potentially donated to the Trump presidential library once that's all put together, but used by the DOD. Do you have any concerns, Senator, about where it's coming from or the fact that the president's accepting this gift in anticipation of not getting anything in return to Qatar?
Yeah, the president, number one, has made it very clear. He's accepting on behalf of the United States. It's not a personal gift to him. The president can't receive a personal gift and to do that. In fact, anyone who sends a gift to the president, those things all end up in the presidential library. The president can't actually keep those gifts. That's already the law that's out there. I am excited that Democrats are flying a plane around Mar-a-Lago with their banner on it, because they're probably using oil that we produced in Oklahoma to be able to fly their plane. So I appreciate the DNC helping out the Oklahoma economy by burning more Jet A fuel as they're flying around with their message that no one's going to care about on it. At the end of the day, the Air Force One is the most unique aircraft in the world. It has unique defense systems. It has unique classified communication systems. So if this aircraft is going to be used in the days ahead, they're going to have to strip it down, rewire it, do a lot of work on it. So it'll take a long time to be able to get it ready to be Air Force One, because there is no aircraft in the world like Air Force One.
Oklahoma Senator James Lankford on National Report. And a shout out to Border Agent Mr. R, we'll call him, in Texas. I don't want to use his name, but Mr. R and several of his colleagues, other border agents that listen to the Newsmax Daily every day, thank you for what you do, and be safe, my friends. By the way, you can say hello, contact me, complain, ask a question, whatever, at Radio_Marino on X. I'm also on Instagram at Radio Marino, but that's more of a personal and family kind of thing. If you're a professional, reach out on LinkedIn. Let's link up. I'm not too big on Facebook. And let me know where you listen, when you listen. I always love to hear that stuff. Again, Radio_Marino. Newsmax border correspondent, the great Jason Jones, also checked in on the show with news of a massive drug seizure in Mexico.
Turning now to this, we're learning the Mexican Navy has reported a massive cocaine bust off the Pacific coast.
Yeah, our border correspondent, Jason Jones, is following Mexico's latest drug enforcement efforts, and he joins us now with more on that. Good morning to you, Jason.
Oh, John, Emma, good morning. Look, the map on global drug trafficking and trafficking within our hemisphere, all these corridors, guys, it is changing almost real time, and we're watching it play out, not only in our country and at our southern border, but throughout this hemisphere. Let me just first take you to the seizure here. This occurred day before yesterday. Great work by the Mexican forces out there off the state of Guerrero in the Pacific as they seized 1,300 kilos of cocaine. Look, I show you these seizures all the time. Look, the Sheinbaum administration in just the last few months, guys, they've seized 37 tons of cocaine. Now, as you know, I'm going to go to the why is this important and how does this impact us and the rest of the world. What is happening right now is a direct result of the Trump policies as they are putting the pinch on the Mexican cartels, both at our southern border and throughout the country of Mexico, as the Sheinbaum administration is also going after the logistics in phase one of this whole program to start going after these cartels under the new terrorism designation. Who sees a gap in the market? That's the Colombian cartels down there. And so what they're now doing is saying, okay, we're going to take advantage of this. You're going to see a lot of change in operations, deep water horizon events where they're going further and further out to try to move this cocaine into the United States. Second thing to be watching for is the movement of drugs via aircraft and heavy lift drones into the country as they try to start taking over. There's really three parts down there that have changed over some decades. First, Colombia, we're well aware of, as the FARC has been heavily involved in moving cocaine into the United States and globally. But you've also got a new player down there, and that's the country of Ecuador. They're working with the Colombian cartels and the Mexican cartels, and have for some time now, to move those drugs not only into our country, but then also get them into Europe, New Zealand, and to Australia. So this is the shift you're hearing me talk about. But one thing I will tell you here, this is a big, big shift here taking place. And I'll be very frank. The Trump administration needs to take some credit for this because they are stopping this far before it ever gets to our border as a direct result of the collaboration with Mexico. But also, guys, taking on these cartels finally, it's making a big impact. And you're seeing it in the seizures that are taking place down in Mexico and along our border.
Newsmax border correspondent Jason Jones. Wow. 3,000 pounds of cocaine in one seizure. Somebody or some people are having a bad week. If they're still alive. Know what I mean? On yesterday's Newsmax Daily, I played a segment from the Chris Salcedo Show that included Chris railing against Democrats and rhinos, as he typically does. Later in the day, he continued that conversation with Sebastian Gorka. And when Chris says research coming up here, I'm pretty sure he means he listened to the Newsmax Daily.
Let's continue this conversation with Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism, Sebastian Gorka. Seb, it's always a pleasure to have you. Did a little research and discovered that this Congress is one of the least productive in almost a century. Apparently, they've only produced 6 bills in Trump's first 100 days. Compare that to 11 bills signed by Joe Biden in his first 100 days. And now we're learning that a near majority of the Republican conference in the Senate is refusing to codify President Trump's executive order on DOGE and other cuts to this massive, unaccountable, and corrupt government bureaucracy. Your thoughts on these Republicans who are rejecting the message of the last election?
Well, it's exactly that. I guess they slept through it. They're all collective Rip Van Winkles and missed the 77 million Americans, the popular mandate as well as the Electoral College. It's not just the comparison, as you say, of 5 or 6 bills to the 11 that Biden had signed by this time, which had been prepared by the Democrats. It's also comparing that pathetic number to the over 100 executive orders the president has signed and the more than 400 executive actions in toto that he's taken. So I guess we know who's America first through the branches of government, and the clear representative is my boss, President Trump, and the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, we see Senator Tom Tillis. He's trying to get back in President Trump's good graces. The Senate GOP put out a splashy tweet highlighting Tillis' support for President Trump, although we haven't seen it lately. This is after Tillis single-handedly killed the nomination of President Trump's pick for U.S. Attorney Ed Martin, and after Senator Tillis, after doing nothing for the last decade to address big pharma forcing Americans and American consumers to subsidize medicines for socialist countries, he was among the first to condemn President Trump's efforts to get fairness for Americans on drug pricing. This avalanche of turncoats, you know, Seb, rarely takes place on the Democrat side. They remained united, even pushing the real big lie that Biden was sharp and was not mentally compromised. How will the White House deal with Republicans who are more loyal to Democrats than their own voters?
It's not just the White House's job. I think every one of your viewers, Chris, has to send a very clear message to their representatives and their senators. It's very clear that if you don't understand what happened in November, you're out of touch with the American people. And there must... Who was it? It was some senator from Illinois. What was his name? Obama, right. He said elections have consequences. We have the most consequential president of the modern age. President Trump, who has done more in 110 days than any president has ever done in 110 days. I guess the establishment just does what the establishment does. But I think there will be political consequences if they don't understand what those 77 million Americans are demanding of all the people who represent them, not just the 2 people. Let's remind them now, Chris. There are 2 people in the whole political constellation of the United States who are elected by all Americans. There's only 2. It's not the leader of the House. It's not the leader of the Senate. It's nobody on Capitol Hill. It's the president and the vice president. Period. End of story.
Deputy Assistant to the President, Senior Director of Counterterrorism, and former Newsmax host Dr. Sebastian Gorka on the Chris Salcedo Show. And Gorka is absolutely right. The voters, the American people, you have to let them know the midterms will be here before you know it. During that segment, producers were showing Senate Republicans that have voted against certain DOGE cuts. People that you know, right? Like Tom Tillis, like John Thune, Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, some of the other, usuals. But I was surprised to see up there South Carolina Senator and former Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott. I don't know exactly which DOGE cuts he voted against, but again, surprised to see Tim Scott up there. So President Trump is now in Abu Dhabi, the third stop of his Middle East trip. There was speculation, you recall, about him making a stop in Turkey, where Russia and Ukraine peace talks were supposed to be happening today. But Russian President Vladimir Putin, who suggested the meeting, did not show up at the meeting. Very Putin-esque, right? I don't think anybody's surprised about that. Ukrainian President Zelensky is there, and he is pissed. Called the Russians a bunch of phonies. So I guess the talks aren't going very well. That will be big in the news today, along with the Trump tour. There's big news on Wall Street as well. Stocks are in the red this morning after Walmart posted better than expected earnings, but said it is going to start raising prices due to tariffs. President Trump said that India has offered a trade deal with 0 tariffs. And Dick's Sporting Goods, which was almost out of business a few years ago, made a massive comeback and announced it is buying Foot Locker. Once again, Jerome the Profit Killer Powell had to talk this morning. He's at the Jackson Hole Summit, annual summit. We don't need to hear from this guy every week. I say it all the time. As a trader, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are slightly lower this morning as well. At the time of recording, Bitcoin is down just about $900 at 102,700. All right, keep up with all of the news today and tonight on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you have the app so you can keep up to date throughout the day, anywhere, anytime. The news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline with Bianca De La Garza. Great way to get caught up on your lunch break. Then American Agenda, Carl Higbee, Chris Salcedo, Greta Van Susteren, Rob Schmidt tonight, Finnerty, Greg Kelly reports, The Right Squad, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, Friday Eve, right? And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.